Hi everybody, my name is Professor Jason Snart. I'll be your instructor for our English 1152 poetry. I suppose you could call it poetry analysis because we do have an English 2252, which I also teach actually in spring, which is the poetry writing course. Although what you'll find as we go through is that we actually do a lot of fairly creative and creative writerly kinds of things even in our so-called analysis course. So we're in the 12-week format, so we move a little bit quicker than we might in the traditional 16-week. And for now, I'm just going to sort of orient you, show you around the course a little bit, how things are set up, give you a sense of, where to go, some of the important links that we'll need in our course menu as we move through things, introduce myself a little bit. I'll hopefully do at least a couple of talking head announcements like this, although it's usually more useful actually to be showing you the actual course and where we're at and assignments that we're working on and stuff like that. So this one particular video announcement might run just a little bit long relative to the others. It is important that you watch these. They're not really lecture-based, content stuff. But they do point you to important aspects of the course or coursework and kind of guide you through certain things that are going on. So again, I consider this part of the course, even if it's obviously unscripted and pretty informal. Okay, so you'll always land in the announcements section here, which is where you're watching this, although it's blank now because I'm obviously recording it. One of the early things that I need you to do as part of our course is to get a Google account if you don't already have one. So most people do. If you want to get more of a professional or school one, that's not a bad idea instead of using your personal one, but that's totally up to you. So obviously they're free. It's not that big a deal. It takes 5 or 10 minutes to sign up. And so if you use Gmail, you've already got a Google credential. You just need that username and sign in. We'll be using a number of tools within the kind of Google universe there, within the context of our course, which is housed here in Blackboard, but the use of those tools allows us to collaborate a lot more easily, create content a lot more easily. So again, I'll kind of walk us through how all the pieces will fit together. So that's first and foremost. You can click into our syllabus page here. You'll notice that this, like a lot of the content in our course, is a scrollable embedded document. So again, you'll obviously have the ability to scroll on the side of your computer, but always kind of look for that internal scroll bar to make sure that you can read through the entirety of a document, an assignment, whatever it happens to be. So the syllabus is pretty standard fare, right? The generic course description, the course objectives. These are the objectives that would show up for any version of English 1152, whether it's online, face-to-face, 12-week, 8-week, 16-week, whatever it happens to be. So these are the principles that guide our class, but they guide the 1152 course. So they're not specific just to our section of it. And we'll actually return to these and sort of keep them foregrounded as we go through the course, so we can always be thinking about, okay, what's the assignment that I'm working on for this unit, but also how does it point us back to these larger course objectives. It gives like the work that we're doing, even if it's sort of fun and engaging, it gives it purpose relative to like why you maybe took English 1152. The topical outline you can glance at, but sort of less important for us. It's really the course objectives that are shaping what we do. Some reminders about Blackboard, which you obviously know already if you're watching this. Some student help stuff, again, really more tech-based kinds of things. There's no textbook, which is nice, a no-cost, right, textbook option for our course here. Every reading that we do is linked or embedded in the course, and you'll see that as we get into it. But again, the only requirement is really that you need that Google account. There's no cost again, but it's important to set that up. So a little reminder right here. The calendar is in Blackboard. I'll take a look at that in just a sec. And then everything else in the syllabus is kind of course policy stuff. Certainly important to read, but I'm not going to go through every little bit of it with a fine-tooth comb here. Again, fairly standard stuff that you're going to find show up in syllabi for almost any kind of course that you take. And the grading is all in Blackboard, and you can follow the My Grades link here over in our course menu. And of course, as we go through and complete things and I assign grades and provide comments, that will start to populate. So you'll actually have some numbers in there. So the syllabus is here, outside of maybe the course objectives, which we'll return to as we go. There's not a lot of really like immediate information that you need to act on here. It's just a good sort of policy document. These are repeated here, sometimes with a few links that might be useful, but again, nothing that's not really in the syllabus already. So the syllabus, and what you'll notice is that as we go through certain things in our course here, I'll move menu items around just to kind of get them out of the way. So our course menu won't change drastically, but you'll probably see things shift a little bit just to, you know, get the most important stuff kind of right at the top. And as we finish stuff or becomes less important, I might move it towards the bottom a little bit. Alrighty, so I think the two most important links that you're going to want to go to every time you're checking into Blackboard here, which should be often, is the units and the due dates, clearly linked together. The due dates obviously just provide us the due date, the timeline for our course, so it's not like a self-paced or independent study kind of a thing here. And of course the units contain all of the assignments, the requirements, the work, the links, everything that we're doing based on the schedule that we're following. So I'm going to click us into our due dates here. Again, notice the embedded doc that you can scroll through. So the first day of classes is today when I'm recording this. I'm going to try to wrap it up pretty soon here since it's about 15 minutes to 11 o'clock. We're in the 12-week term, which means that, again, like I said, we move a little bit faster. We want to fit all of the 16 weeks or the 3 full credits into a slightly truncated version. You should really be checking into Blackboard pretty much every day, even if you're not necessarily doing a ton of work every single day. Develop a workflow and schedule that works for your schedule based on our due dates, obviously. But if you were in the classroom for a 16-week version of this, you'd be just in class for 3 hours every week. If this were an 8-week class, even faster than our 12-week term, you'd be sitting in that classroom for double that, right? 6 hours. So our 12-week is kind of in the middle of that, but if you think about time on task and how much time you want to devote to this class, a good generic measure is just thinking, like, if this were a classroom class, you'd have to be in the classroom for like a little bit more than that 3 hours, a little bit less than the 6 hours. And so that's kind of how much time you need to be prepared to devote to each of the units as we work through them. Some units probably will go faster, others you'll want to sort of chunk out that time. So it's nice being online because we have a degree of flexibility. We're not always in the classroom for a certain number of minutes, always at the same time on the same days. But it doesn't mean that you can just sort of do the class when everything else is done, right? Put it to the bottom of the to-do list. One of the little pieces of advice that I would suggest is whatever method you use to keep your calendar organized, a physical day planner, reminders on your phone, a digital calendar of some kind, is to make sure that you block out actual time that you're going to devote to working on this course. Probably not 2 hours at once, or 3 or more, but kind of space it out through the week so it fits with your schedule, right? You're taking advantage of the flexibility, but you're not inadvertently falling behind or forgetting to do things or missing due dates or having to work so quickly that the work just isn't really that good. And ultimately, your grade suffers, obviously, but you're not really learning that much. So at the end of the day, that's kind of what matters. But block out time to devote to the course just as if you had to sit in a classroom or you were going to work or whatever. So you wouldn't be taking a face-to-face class that meets, let's say, Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 10 to 10:50 and then schedule a dentist appointment at that same time, right? Because those are two physically different places you have to be. In the same way, you have to make some space for an online course, like physically in your day planner, and kind of commit to that. Don't lump it on top of 15 other things that you've got to do, and just because it doesn't require your physical presence at 10 a.m. somewhere or whatever, doesn't mean that it doesn't need that same kind of space on a calendar. We just have a little bit more flexibility about where that space goes. All right, so that's my time management lesson, coming from an expert, right? All right, so our due date system is a little funky at the start just because we start on a Tuesday as opposed to a Monday because of the way the calendar works. But you'll notice we get into a really regular Wednesday, Friday setup here. So every one of our units has 2 separate due dates, except a couple much later, but you'll understand why as we get there. In every unit, there's always going to be sort of primary or main work that we're doing, a main assignment, a main post to a discussion board, a project, whatever it's going to be, right? And then there'll almost always be at least some form of a reply or like a back and forth, so there's some interaction in the class going on. Everything is due in the unit by that first due date, whatever it happens to be once we get into our nice regular Wednesday here. The only thing that's due or that you have that extra time for is any kind of a reply component. And, it kind of makes sense because we don't want these to be the same or so close together that people are getting things done really late on whatever this due date is and trying to do replies at basically the same time. It's too rushed. People are waiting on other people. It's just no good. So we have this dual or double due date system. It might take a little while to get used to, but again, I'm explaining it here. It's laid out in text so you can read it carefully on your own time. It should be pretty transparent. And the reason for it is really to facilitate our work in the course. It's not just some arbitrary thing to break up the weeks or whatever. So we have our first due date coming up on this Thursday, then replies due on Friday. Obviously, we turn around here. So if you finished up work here on the Thursday, you kind of need to keep your eye then on the reply part. And it's not to say that you have to wait until after Thursday to do replies. If there's enough work that people have done that you can jump in, you could be doing your own work submitted on Wednesday, you jump in on Thursday, there's a few other folks, so you do the replies and you're all wrapped up. Alternately, you might be kind of waiting on replies into here, but there's nothing to say that you can't then jump into Unit 2, so you're sort of wrapping up Unit 1 and jumping into Unit 2 almost at the same time. That's again why you just need to sort of develop a workflow that is good for you within the constraints of our due date system here. Okay, so let's jump in really quickly to Unit 1, understanding that hopefully you get how our due dates work. And again, navigating our course is really about staying on top of units, due dates. Everything else is really like your own grades, contact information for me, a couple other help resources, stuff that you might not even use really as the course goes on. So again, let's jump into our units list here. I'm going to tell you right now, and I'll remind you probably in a whole bunch of video announcements, that you have to attend a poetry event, a poetry reading of some kind. That doesn't happen until way down here in Unit 10, but I'm already suggesting that you keep an eye out for doing this. So you're not going to do it as part of Unit 10, like you've waited all those weeks. If there's something in your neighborhood next week, then go to it. And I've actually built a little document here. Doesn't have anything yet, but as I find out things, if you want to add to it because you live in a certain area, you've discovered your library is doing something, you can email me, you can add it directly to the list here. So hopefully, even though you might think that these are sort of few and far between, we'll actually have a pretty good list of things that are hopefully local to you. We want to keep the cost down, obviously. But again, keep your eye out now. Don't wait until you're in like Unit 9.5 and be like, uh-oh, I got to do a poetry event. And then you're stuck. So let's jump into our first unit here. Alrighty, so I always try to start the unit with a reference to our general course objectives. Honestly, once we get into the main work for the course, we're really touching on almost every objective every time we do a unit, so you'll see them repeat a whole bunch of times. You are going to develop and use an e-portfolio, or really just a website for yourself, specific to your work in this course. So that's what we're starting with today. Notice again the embedded doc. It really is nice for me. It's easy to edit. I can put in screenshots that kind of walk people through. And this is again where it might be a little bit intimidating because you've never done this before, but just that's where you need the time to sit down and not be like, okay, I have 12 minutes to do all my online work. That's not going to work, right? That wouldn't even be part of a single class meeting that you would otherwise be doing in the face-to-face format. So you got to invest the time. So we have the assignment that's going to send you to the new Google Sites Builder. It's really pretty slick for designing websites. Make sure you're using, I would suggest Chrome, the Chrome browser, or Firefox I think works pretty well. I have a feeling that it's still the case that Safari, the Mac browser, I think, if I'm getting that right, does not play nicely with the new Google Sites Builder. So make sure you're using Chrome or Firefox. It's going to work way better. Okay, kind of walks you through setting up the page itself, where to go, what to click. You can give your portfolio, the whole website, whatever title you like, you know, English 1152, you can put your name in there, whatever you want. It'll ask you to create a URL. Again, keep that generic, maybe throw your name in there, just to make sure that it doesn't duplicate something that's already out there. You can set it to be fairly private, so it's not going to show up in any Google searches or anything like that. You'll notice that when you go to publish it, that'll come up. And then the only assignment here, in addition to creating the site, is to do an About Me page, kind of just getting to know our classmates here. Tell us something interesting about yourself, give us a paragraph or two, post some pictures, link to some stuff, right? Get as creative as you want. So not really a poetry assignment, but really just an opportunity for us to get to know each other. And certainly you can talk about why you're in the class. Do you have professional or scholarly academic interests in the field of literature, English, poetry, maybe something else that this class just fits into? I'm always interested to know that stuff. So pretty free form, but again, it needs to be more than just a sentence like, hey everybody, whatever. Okay, so that's the assignment here. And then you will notice that the embedded document is part of a large, slightly larger assignment, and it's within the discussion board tool in Blackboard. You can always look for this little thumbtacked thing here, piece of paper. That means discussion board, which means that this, Unit 1, creating your portfolio, is a clickable link. It'll take you into the discussion board. So you want to build your site in Google Sites. So you're out of Blackboard here, doing your About Me page, making sure you hit that publish so everything is saved and like pushed out to the web. And then you will have created for yourself a URL, the web address for your website, for your ePortfolio. That's where you want to click into the discussion board, create a thread, and just post that link. Do it in the body of your post, not the subject line. You'll see why if you make that mistake. And that's pretty much it. That way I and everyone in the class can go into the discussion board. We'll see all those links there and we can go and visit them. That's due by that first due date, okay? Now we have a reply component where I'm going to ask you to go into the discussion board again, click into a bunch of threads, and then visit and reply using the discussion board to at least 4 of your classmates' portfolio pages. So you'll be visiting at least 4 websites. It'll open in a new window, or you can open it in a new browser tab. You'll look at it, read it, be like, oh my God, I went to that same high school, or oh my God, I know that person, or whatever you have to say. Then you're going to come back here, or you might have this open already, and use the reply feature in the Blackboard discussion board tool to post a quick reply to that person. Again, invest some time. It doesn't need to be this formal, right, 5-paragraph essay, but it should be a substantial paragraph or two, not just a quick hello or a rushed thing because the due date's coming up on you. All right, so that's all we have going on for our first unit. Not a ton of work to do, but one of the things that I'm always conscious of is making sure that people have a little bit of time at least to feel comfortable in our course, just navigating the basic components here before we launch into like 5 separate things you have to do in Unit 1. So again, it's a bit of a lighter unit, but intentionally so. All right, so I'm going to wrap this up here. Keeping in mind the due dates link, super important to know where we're at, but also kind of what's on tap for us. And then you can always jump into any of the units to see, well, what are we doing next? I wouldn't work ahead necessarily. I've seen too many people get so far ahead they forget. Either they do poor work because they're rushing, or they forget to go back in and do replies, and then they're missing a lot of points, not because they're not understanding course content, but they're just like not doing basic stuff that's assigned in the class. But you can certainly look into it, see what's on tap for us, and then again, jumping into Unit 1 and doing the assignment here, building that portfolio using Google Sites, and then posting the URL and doing some replies to other people's sites using the discussion board tool here in Blackboard. All right, so welcome to the class. I know it's a lot to sort of absorb, especially if you already have other classes going on that maybe are running in the 16-week term. And everyone has sort of life going on as well. Take us back to our announcements page. So take some time to navigate, block out time on your schedule so you're not rushing or trying to do 5 things at once, and this just doesn't really, you can't process things properly. And then if you see errors or if you have questions or concerns, you can always be in touch with me. My email is here, and I'll also include it in my first video announcement. Oh, and I promise, future announcements won't be as long as this one. I promise.